Lights, camera, render.
A new lecture and pretty much the last lecture in this chapter. And what we will do in this lecture is we will start rendering. And what is a render? A render is a 2D presentation of our 3D scene. So let's start, and let's first go to the first layout. That's the default layout where we have a nice big viewport. And our model looks a little bit dull here, and we already made a texture. So let's go to the shading options here, and let's click on the little V you see here on the end. And here, click on texture, and the texture will show up. And there is something we didn't do yet, so we'll do that now. So when you go to the properties panel here, and then go to object properties, on the top the name of this object is still cube. So let's change that to well. So let's change that to well. Let's click on it and just type in well. And now in the viewport you can also see here it's called well. And the well is called well in the outliner as well. And next up is the lamp. We'll left click on it and then hit X to delete it. So we will do a couple of things in this lecture. We will add a sun lamp to improve the lighting and give a nice shadow to the well. We will add a nicer background that will also give some light and looks more like a sky. We'll also add a plane at floor level so that the sun can create a well shadow on the floor here. And the floor will just be a big plane, so let's start with doing that. But the cursor is not in the center of our scene. Let's first fix that. Hit Shift S, that brings up this menu, and here we select cursor to world origin or numpad 1. And now our cursor is at the center of the scene. Then we'll hit Shift A and we'll add a mesh, a plane. It's a little bit too small. So let's go to edit mode. Hit S for scale and scale it up. Let's say 500 by typing in 500 on the numpad. We go back to object mode with the menu or by hitting tab. And then we'll have a huge floor plane and that's good. Okay, zoom in again. Now we'll add the sun lamp. So again hit Shift A and then go down a bit and here you have light and there we choose sun. The sun is now placed at the center of the scene, so we can move it up a bit by hitting G and C to move up. The sun's direction is represented by this line here. So it's pointing straight down, and that's a little bit strange because we are not living at the equator, at least most of us are not. So we'll have to give the sun a small angle. So we'll hit 3 to go to side view, then hit R to rotate and rotate until we have about, let's say 30 degrees. And if you're wondering how I know that, when you look here in the left top corner, when I'm rotating you can see the angle there. So let's do it again, Ctrl Z to cancel, R to rotate, and now in the left top corner you can see the angle of rotation. We can use a numpad, so hit 30 and then X with rotation of 30 degrees around the X-axis. Okay, and now let's go to top view by hitting 7 on the numpad, then hit R for rotate and 45 to rotate 45 around the Z-axis. We can place the sun anywhere. Normally when you place a lamp, the position determines the placement of the shadow it makes. But in case of the sun, because the sun is so high in the sky, it doesn't really matter where it stands. Only the rotation of the sun, as represented by this line, determines where the shadow will fall. Okay, so we have added a sun and we have added a plane. So let's now do a test render. Go to the viewport shading button and choose rendered. And there you go, here you see what the final version with Eevee rendering will look like. You see the shadow is pointing in the right direction. You can turn off all the overlays so that you don't see all the gizmos in the grid. Let's turn them on again. Now let's go to the render panel here. There are a lot of options here, but we will not go to any of them now because it will make the lecture way too long. But it's just so you know it's there, so later on we will have a look at this. But here in the World tab, there's something we will change. Here in background, let's make this a little bit bigger so you can read it. So here it says background, and what you can do, we can change the color of the background. For example to red or blue And with that, the complete scene changes its color. Let's change it to green, or orange, cyan, or yellow, all those freaky colors. But instead of a color, we have used nodes, make sure it's on, so blue. Here in background, instead of changing the color, we can also click on the dot next to it, and here we can choose environment texture. And that makes our scene pink. And when you have something to do with textures in Blender, pink normally means that the texture is missing. So we need to add a texture to the environment texture option here. And here where it says OP, which of course means open, click and choose a sky texture that I've added to this lecture. So we have two textures here. We have one called 1K 3200 Kelvin and one says 2K 3200 Kelvin. And 3200 Kelvin is the color that the sky has when it's dusk or dawn. So when the sun comes up or when the sun goes down. So 1K is the size and 2K is twice as big. Depending on the speed of your computer, you can use the 1 or the 2K version. I'll use the 1K version for now. So let's click on that and hit open and have a look. We have a nice sky and also the lighting on the scene itself improved a lot. Okay, now let's go to solid mode and then let's position the camera. Press 0 on the numpad and now what you see is the view of the camera. The camera is not selected, so let's do that first. We can do it by clicking on it in the outliner, or we can just click on the border of the camera itself in the viewport, like so. And the camera is just like any other object, so we can move it, rotate it and scale it, but scaling doesn't do much, I believe. Let's see. No, scaling doesn't do anything. Okay, now, anyway, let's start with the rotation by hitting R. This rotates the camera around the viewport axis, but that's a little bit strange, so we have to do something. Hit X, and now we'll rotate around the X-axis. But that's the global X-axis, and we want to rotate around the local X-axis of the camera. And what we can do is hit X again, and then the rotation makes more sense. It's more like a tilt rotation, like looking up or down. So let's tilt it until it's about here, confirm with left mouse button or enter. Then hit G and Z to move it around the Z-axis. And move it down a little bit until it's about here. So the roof just pops out of the top. And then hit G again and Z twice to go from global to local. And then you can move away from the object, like so. Left mouse button or enter to confirm. There's another way of navigating. You can use that in a normal viewport without the camera, or when the camera is selected you can use it to move the camera. That's the walk navigation. The walk navigation can be started with the back quote. There's a strange key on the left top of most keyboards. And I'll type it in so you can see what I mean. So this is this one, Shift, back quote. Back quote. So let's do that for real now. Shift, back quote, and the cursor jumps to the middle. When you now move your mouse, you can look around. Move around with the W, A, S and D keys. So W is forward, A is left, D is right. And with the S key you can walk backwards. The E key you can go up, and with the Q key you can go down. That's a much easier way of moving your camera around. Or moving in a viewport when you don't have a camera selected or not looking through the camera. So let's replace it, move up or down a bit. And let's put the object a little bit off center, so a little bit to the right. And click on the left mouse button or enter to confirm your current position. Or use escape to cancel out. Okay, and let's go now and look at the shaded version again. So go to the shader panel and click rendered on. Let's turn off the overlays. It looks a little bit washed out to me, so the shadows are a little bit too light. And so what we can do is do a quick fix, and here under the world panel we can go to the background and put the strength of the background texture down. So let's put it on 0.5 for example. It can use some more, 0.1 maybe. 0.2. Okay, I like this. If you like something else, put in another strength number, that's okay. So let's now go to render and here render image or F12 under your function keys. And then a new window appears and voila, there's your render. Rendering might take a little bit longer or might even be faster depending on the system you're using. But it shouldn't take longer than a few seconds because Eevee is fast and this is a very simple scene. So there's just one thing I'd like you to do, and that's I would like to ask you to raise your right hand and give me a high five because you created something really cool. From nothing, you made a 3D model, you painted it, you rendered it. Woohoo! Very cool. Okay, now let's first save our image. So go to Image here and say Save, and save it in the Documents folder, for example. Give it a name. Let's call it First Render, or any other name you like. Now you can close this window and save your project. And if you want, you don't have to, but it would be nice. Below here we can ask questions where it says Q&A. Please upload your image and show it to everyone. I'd like to see your work and maybe we can discuss together if there's something that needs improvement. There's always room for improvement, right? So we finished the first chapter. Thanks again for following this course. I'm very happy with that. I really enjoy teaching this stuff. Next chapter we will go deeper into painting and we will improve our texture, and your skills will be going to the roof, I'm pretty sure about that. So beware and prepare for the next chapter. I'll see you there. Bye bye.